and welcome to my podcast, Conversations with David. I am your host, David Owasi. And on this podcast, we're talking to professionals and entrepreneurs across the country. We're learning about what keeps them passionate, what keeps them going. And we're also talking about lessons learned along the way. Now, I'm here with my very good friend, Tyler Jobb. And I am very excited to have this conversation with him. Tyler and I have known each other for a couple of years now. Why don't you introduce yourself, Tyler?
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Tyler Jobb. I'm from South End, Saskatchewan. That's in actually northern Saskatchewan. This is South End of Ranger Lake. A lot of people ask that question, but yeah, hope you all doing well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tyler. And I wanted to start a conversation really from where you and I got to know each other. We ran businesses side by side, running College Pro franchises. Can you just share a little bit, why you were interested in entrepreneurship in the first place? Where did that start from for you?
Yeah, I think kind of started off when I was a kid. I always had that idea. And I have a history of kind of diving into things. And example from that, I started off. I remember moving from the reserve to the city. I was 13 years old, in the middle of school, but they wanted us to. If we wanted to play hockey competitively, we had to move to the city. So that day, I still remember the call was at lunchtime. We had to move to the city. So that was a big culture shock. And then again, university as well. But I always thank hockey for the opportunities it opened up to. It brought me, and also the places it took me. And when I was introduced to College Pro, I think I was in university. I used to work in up in Fort McMurray quite a bit for my summers in school. While off of school, I would, but I kind of got tired of that, and I needed to change, and so I decided to take I wanted to run a business. So, and I seen College Pro. I was introduced to that, but I wanted to kind of learn the ropes of things first. So I became a painter first, and then the following year I opened up my first business, which was College Pro, franchise off of them. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Thanks for sharing that story with me. You know what? I do identify with some of your story because myself, I moved to Canada when I was just about 18, and it was a huge culture shock for me as well. Perhaps you in a different way to your experience, but I'm very curious for yourself. Like, what was your first year in business like? What was that experience like for you? You learned all the rules, knowing how to paint, but running a whole business is a completely different ball game altogether. How was that like for you?
Oh, it was really tough. I honestly thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. But the lessons I've learned, I had to learn them in order to grow. And it was very tough. I learned a lot about myself, a lot about accountability, goal setting, and expectations were, I think, the three main themes that if something went wrong, it was either one of those three things. I have to kind of sharpen for sure.
Yeah, so goal setting, accountability, and what was the last one? Goal setting, accountability, and you had a last point there. But I was looking to
expectations, yeah,
and expectations. Sorry, thanks for reminding me that. So I'm interested in learning more about that from you. Why were those important pillars for your business and for your personal growth? Like, why would you say goal setting was very important to you and your business?
I think at the end of each year or beginning of the year, we have an end year goal of a certain amount of revenue we would like to hit. And we would break that down to monthly and then weekly and then daily, what we had to do to get to those goals based on past data that they presented us with. And I think that was a big motivating factor, and kind of you can almost see the results like we on a daily basis. And it kind of helped you stay motivated, because each win, each yes you see during cold calling, I would always try and practice celebrating each yes. So what I mean by that is you go to a door to door every evening. I would ask people if they wanted a quote or estimate for some work, and a lot of no's is quite a bit of no's, but there's a lot of yeses too. But we just kind of went through that, and we use those with my team to keep on going.
Yeah, definitely. And, when I was running a business myself, setting goals, huge part of my success, because there's no way to know if you're making any progress if there's no goals to measure your progress against, if you're measuring up or not. Now, the second thing you mentioned there was expectation setting. Like, can you share with me what that means to you, or what that meant to your business, and how you were able to have some of those conversations? What kind of expectations were you typically setting? Was that with yourself? Was that with employees? Like, what was that like for you?
I think it goes with everybody and everything when running a business. We're gonna do it when with customers, because I know you have to be very set to define expectations with them with a project or what services they're going to be getting. And I know a little backstory on that. I didn't do that in my first year, and when I had my first angry customer, which was had a bit of a sleepless night, and that was kind of my first angry customer, my first challenge. And I learned from there, you have to set the expectations. But again, one of the things I always I always do is never run from any challenges like that. I always take them full head on right away. That way they're dealt with, and try and work to each day to better yourself. And back to expectations with yourself, you have to let go of things that that'll affect your performance, or you have to hold yourself accountable with the daily goals you set yourself with. Like, I remember in university, after I finished classes, I'd head over to North Battleford, where I had my franchise set up, and after classes in Saskatoon here, I drive over every evening, go door to door till about 9 at night, and have a meal, come back. And you didn't see much then, but those kind of set the foundation of the franchise over there, which was fun, but it was quite an experience. Yeah. And expectations with I guess your friends, family, partner is just kind of let them know what you're doing and what your goals are, and then that kind of in turn they support you, they love you for sure, and they want you to succeed. So it was quite of a one crazy year that year. It was a big changes for sure.
Right. Absolutely. And thanks for sharing all of that information. And also the last point was, keeping yourself accountable and, living up to whatever expectations you set for yourself. Can you just share some more insight into what that process was like for you, and why it was important for your business for you to be accountable to yourself, I guess, and to others? What was that like?
Accountability. Yep. If anything ever went wrong or everything went right, you'll see it more when things are going wrong. Is everything kind of falls upon you. You have really no one else to blame. It usually kind of trails back to you. Say if something, maybe a conflict arises, and then again goes back to expectations. That I could have avoided that by setting this expectation, or else. Accountability is getting yourself up and out there every single day, no matter the weather, to go out and build this business, and holding yourself accountable to that.
Yeah, I almost sort of see accountability as almost you being your own boss. And I always like the analogy of, if you're running a business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're trying to accomplish some goals, you're almost an employee to yourself. And I know when I used to run my own business, I would ask myself, would I fire myself if I was employed to myself based on my activities right now? So I'm going into my week and I am not hitting off my metrics, and I'm like, if I was hired by if David was hired, if I was an employee of myself, I guess, is this activities up to scratch? Is this up to the expectations? So I guess I definitely agree with you that, having that accountability is definitely key for success. Now, for yourself, Tyler, when you were running your business, you were out there all day, well, as much as you can after working hours. What would you say is the role of work ethic, especially in that first year of business? How important is it to have strong work ethic, especially in your first year of business?
I think it's very important, just because Most of the times you're alone. Most of the times the weather is not the greatest because you're doing this marketing in the winter, and a lot of things are on your plate. And I think, but I've always taught to go 100 whenever you 100% whatever you do, just to get the most out of it. And I think strong work ethic plays a huge role in that, because no matter what life throws at you, you're gonna have to keep going and be as intense as you can be. And if you're having an off day or whatever, you have to find ways to kind of get yourself back in a mind state, right? A state of mind, right?
Yeah. So, it is very easy to talk about work ethic, and it's very easy to say, well, I have a strong work ethic. But for the purpose of our listeners, say, for example, someone is thinking to themselves as they're listening to our conversation and they're saying, well, maybe I'm not strong. No, work ethic is not really my strongest suit. I'm not the hardest worker. How would someone actually, improve or grow that skill? Or how would you say you improved in your work ethic? I guess for some people, maybe it comes naturally to some people. For some other people, maybe they're just a little lazy and it's hard for them to work as hard. What would you say is, 4 steps for someone who's trying to grow in that area?
I think finding your why is a big thing for me. Like, why do you get up every day? What by doing these certain things, how is it going to affect you or your friends or family or your staff? Or I think it's just setting these goals are very important. Daily goals, what you're going to do during the day, the week, the month. And I think it just comes with just finding your why are you doing what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Were you making a point?
And I just said find out why you're doing what you're doing on a daily basis. That's what I said.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. Why is a huge determination. Sometimes that why is what pushes you to go knock on that extra door, to go out when it's all snowy outside, because you have your eyes set on your goals. And I guess I'll put that question back to you, for yourself. What was that big why for you as you started your business? What was that strong motivation that kept you going?
I think it was to be make an impact of some sort, because my end game was always to work back in reserves, right? First Nations communities. And I knew I had to come out here and learn what I needed to learn and bring it back to our community. I think that was the biggest motivator. Yeah, in early stages in the business, I know I was thinking, okay, make good money. Yeah, okay. But I learned quickly that doesn't really get you up in the morning. You can go make money elsewhere, right? But you have to go through the shit to get it through it, doing a business. So I had to really figure it out early in the game that I had to find a why I have to get up every morning. And I think in my mind, my end game was working in the communities and trying to create better opportunities for communities. And I knew business was the tool to do it.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And just speaking about community here, I know, like, I've known you for a couple of years, but you know what? I'm just thinking, I've never really asked you about, where you grew up, your community. Can you just kind of share some more information about that? Where did you grow up, and what was growing up in a First Nations community like?
I grew up in South End, so that's about 600 kilometers north of Saskatoon.
Okay.
And it's about 1,200 to 1,500 people, small town. It's a really welcoming community. I love going out there. That's where all my work comes out of, or most of it anyways. And I grew up there until I was 13, until I had to leave for hockey reasons, and didn't come back until I came back occasionally, right? Summertime, whatever, right? But I work there almost full time now. And yeah.
Yeah, Very interesting. That kind of segues to my next questions, which I was going to ask you about your current company, which is Jobb Developments. And can you just share a little bit more about what you currently do in this with your business? What kind of services your business offer, and how that impacts your passion, giving back to your community and going back home? Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so right after College Pro, just before I entered College Pro, I did my first reserve project. It was Montreal Lake Cree Nation. We did a school there, and that was actually my very first biggest job. So that was a learning situation in itself, and I learned, but I realized there was opportunity there. But then I loved doing running a business because of you can kind of you set the tone, you do what you want to do and how you want to do that. And so I started Jobb Developments. The first couple of years were quite the struggle because Jobb Developments didn't exist. So I had to build that off the ground. So the first couple of years were really struggling and a lot of lessons learned. So again, going through that process again of starting a business, but in a different market this time, which was remote projects. And you have to really be really well planned. I learned and expectations, and because if you miss even an item on a job site, that could cost you thousands of dollars because you got to go a couple day trip, hotel, whatever, to go get the certain item you need. So
right.
And we've been I'm doing that for I'm on my 5th year now, 6th year actually. I had my 5th year anniversary last December 24th, so that was fun.
Yeah,
It's been a fun ride so far, and now things are pretty busy right now. And right now we're doing a lot of work in the renewable sector for and one of the programs I'm involved in is called the Indigenous Off Digital Initiative. So that program was with Natural Resources Canada, and we use that to we've been doing that we're on our 2nd year now. There's 4 phases. One's with capacity building, and then within the individual, which is myself, a community energy champion, and I've been doing that for went through a 2020 Catalyst program, which is a really awesome program. We basically went to various communities across Canada and learned how they got their projects off the ground and what are the steps they took, and what benefits that come for each project, whether it's biomass, solar, or wind, stuff like that. And that's what we've been up to for a while. Right now we're in the community engagement, community energy planning phase right now with one of our communities is Kinnerseo. It's the only diesel community left in Saskatchewan, and we've been working with them, and it's been really fun. A lot of learning again. Another thing, and we've been and our next phase is coming in April 1st, is hopefully as long as COVID doesn't affect our schedule, but we're looking to get some things on the ground for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to hear about your work in the First Nations community, but more importantly, I am very, very interested in learning more about your work with renewable energies. I know as climate change, that is definitely something everyone has been talking about in the last couple of years. What role do you think renewable energy is in dealing with climate change, and how does that factor into your work with some of the small First Nations community that you work with?
I think it's going to be I know First Nations communities are leading the role in implementing renewables in their communities, and just to combat climate change. And also there's a lot of benefits that come from projects like solar or wind or biomass. It's job creation, reducing the GHG emissions, and it also I kind of envision it as a spark to the community to tackle some of these problems they have, like high costs of electricity, lack of employment, many issues like that, and housing, of course, because when you're dealing with that renewables and electricity, you're going to have to look at the housing, right? What state it's in, what kind of opportunities are there we can kind of explore, and it's a bunch of benefits that come through with it. I think that's why First Nation communities are across Canada are going to be leading that change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely appreciate you, sharing that information. And, I know First Nations issues is one that is near and dear to you. What kind of challenges do you see, based on your experience? What kind of challenges are there to prevent initiatives like this from, being successful? When I say initiatives, renewable energy solutions, housing, what kind of challenges do you see, and potentially what kind of potential solutions do you think might be available now? Of course, I know this is a huge problem that even governments have struggled on for years, but I'm just curious, considering that you are an insider from the community, you understand these issues, what kind of potential solutions do you think could help?
Yeah, there's a long list of challenges, but a lot of them, I know I face, is the remoteness of the community and the high cost of getting these things done. But I think finding the right partners, right teammates, the right staff, and setting the right expectations are very important to getting these either projects or anything like that off the ground, and just kind of doing your homework, your research, and seeing where you're at and where the community's at. And that's why it's also very important to include the community in all these conversations. What were they? Because they're living there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, right? So it's always very important to have their input, and where do they see the community in 5-10 years, next year, or and I think that's where you when you have these events, like events we've had, we want to include the community as much as we can, and that way it kind of gives the leader, or the, say, whoever's doing these projects, to have the community on their side, and they have that the reassurance that this is what they want, and this is what we're going to work hard for, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do our best to get this thing on the ground. And I know that kind of helps with when you're going after funding opportunities and stuff like that. The community wants this. We have the support, and we just need you to do some of these things, or this is what we're going to do. And whether you like it or not, type of deal. Yeah, so it's a lot of I think having community support and having them involved throughout every process, I think is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the answer there. And I know that, it is very tempting for most people people who don't know much about this, challenges, to feel like, it's all the government's responsibility, and it's just the government have to pump in money. Do you see it that way? Do you see it as the government's responsibility to help out with such issues? Or do you think there's potential opportunities in the private industry and for small businesses to be able to really take advantage of some of these situations and help out in one way by, helping the communities, but also be able to, use the private resources to benefit the community in one way? Is it mainly a government's responsibility, or is it a combination of government and private involvements to help solve some of these issues?
No, not really an easy answer to it, but I think the right approach is not viewing the government as somebody to pump up money, right? You view them as like a partnership, I'd say. And again, with your small business owners and then your economic development group there, just have a partnership together with the same agenda. For example, the community energy plan, that's what we're working on right now, is what are the issues that come up during these meetings, or what are the challenges that this community faces, and what are the solutions out there to kind of deploy into these communities to alleviate some of these problems, or even solve them, right? And I think it'll have to be a partnership all the way through, where there's business people, government and stuff like that, right? Because that's kind of the approach we've been taking, just trying to where is everybody at with these things, and hopefully work together and let's get these things done.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't think there's a one-sized answer that fits everything. I think it's a combination of, conversations with the community leaders, people like yourself, business leaders who are active with the business community, and also with the community. I think it's a definite partnership. Where do you see job developments going in the next couple of years? What's the goal in the next 5, 10 years? Where do you see a business?
I'd say keep growing, we keep reinvesting in our company and growing and adding as much services we can. But I think in 5, 10 years, I think I'd like to be focused on issues like this, and using business as a tool to combat these issues, where like I'm doing hopefully a lot of renewables or a lot of retrofits and with housing, and kind of trying leading the way, because that's what I want to use. Just what I want to do with Kinroseo is like learn what I have to learn there, and then kind of help other communities to go through that same path. But because every community is going to be different, it's going to be a little different shape or form that they're going to be going through to get these types of projects on the ground, and that's the fun part, I think. And I think that for the next few years, we're going to be busy doing that. I'm pretty sure we'll be.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for answering that. I'm also curious, based on your personal experience during the pandemic, of course, how would you say the pandemic has affected First Nations communities? How has that impacted life there, and of course, business and the community in general?
Yeah, that was the pandemic. Nobody could have predicted that. Anyways, it's not me anyways, but we had all these plans this year and all these projects we had to do. But the pandemic, obviously, because most of our work is in First Nations communities. So, and a lot of these communities had no access. So you can't access that just to maintain isolation and social distancing, just to prevent the spread of the virus. And so a lot of my projects were pushed back, probably some of them till next year now. But it's been quite a challenge. But in a way, I've been able to get a lot further than I would have in different aspects of the business, as in like reinvesting into the company, training, stuff like that. And now we're more than ready to take on stuff that's coming up. So, and such as the Renewable project, hopefully next summer. And so we've been really getting all my crew trained up, and just using that opportunity to reinvest in ourselves and growing, and also focusing on the Indigenous Diesel initiative as well. And then that has been affected, but we're doing a lot of adapting, of course, like everybody has, and social media has been a really big tool, I think, just getting these information that we need in. And I think a lot of people are at their, I guess it would be from home, and they're a lot easier to access, I guess, just to get these some of these data we need done or into our plans.
Yeah. So definitely some opportunities available as a result. I do like how you view it. You have a positive take on it, and you're focusing on things that you can control, which is making sure your staff and your employees have all that training needed so that they can be well equipped when those big jobs comes through. And it's very easy to get lost in worrying about what you can control, which is a lot of things right now with the pandemic. I do have a question for you, though. What would your advice be to someone, perhaps like yourself, in one of the First Nations communities across the country, who perhaps is worried about, how to establish themselves. Maybe they have dreams to become a business owner, and they perhaps are not seeing that path to help them to get to where they want to be. What would your advice be for someone like that who is perhaps listening and thinking, well, how can I get to my goal? How can I be accomplished just like how you are? How can I own my own business? What would your word of advice be to them?
Well, I remember when before I started business, I was pretty shy. I
Hmm.
don't, unless it was had to do with hockey, I was pretty confident out there, but I was really shy. So I remember why it was in my mind to do it. So just start. The worst thing that'll happen, you learn the lesson. But I don't consider it failing. When I do something wrong, it's learning. It's the best lessons you'll have, even how you view life. It's when you start a business, it'll teach you a lot of things. It'll mold you into a different person. But I
Hmm.
think if somebody wants to start a business, just start. Whether it's something small, you want to just learn a little bit of this and that, or start in the evenings when you're busy with work. Just find out why you want to do what you want to do, and just kind of feed off of that each time days get tough.
Hmm.
Uh, find your why is very important, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So one of the things that I have been passionate about, or that has been very important to me, when I interview individuals like yourself who are successful in business, is I'm always thinking about the role of emotional intelligence and soft skills in career success. Based on your own personal experience, how important would you say having skills like this is to your success? And the reason why I ask that is, a lot of people focus on some of what we call hard skills, like they want to know how to sell, for example, how to know their numbers, how to do their financial planning, and things like that. The harder skills that are more tangible. What would you say is the role of softer skills, the emotional intelligence and communication, things like that, in career success or business success?
Yeah, those are actually very important too. Especially they play a role on everyday activities. This is an activity, I guess, but and being able to control your emotions is very important, especially if there's a conflict, or is
Mhm.
there if there's a challenging situation, or if something you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you have to pretty much get it done. But you have to very hold yourself, be very composed,
Mm.
and it comes over with practice. I remember when I was starting out, I'd always try and result to anger right away. You know what I mean? Get mad and just like, why isn't this working? Frustrated, being frustrated. But then I realized over time, like, getting mad is not going to really do anything to solve this thing. So
Mm.
you have to kind of hold that back, and then uh, view it in a different, or remove yourself from the situation and then view it. Whereas like, okay, I got a couple options here. Find out options. Like, I can either do this or that, or what's gonna uh, come up with the best result. And I think controlling your emotions is very important, like that. Just and then not thinking and not reacting so suddenly. It's okay to take a few moments and just think what's the best plan of attack,
Mm.
or a plan of next best step, really.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Tyler. And when I think about, the role of emotional intelligence in my business as a whole, it was hugely important. I remember my first year was a bit of a gong show. In my first year, first job that I was doing for a client, my two employees quit on the first day of the job just because I just was losing it and freaking out, and I was just not composed on the job site. And I think that was the moment I realized to myself, I really need to do some more work on my emotional intelligence and how to handle myself. And when I think about it from a big picture, I'm always thinking about three to four things. The first thing I'm always thinking about is self-awareness. And I think being intelligent with emotions comes from understanding where you are. So knowing and be able to identify your emotions. If you're feeling anger, if you're feeling, rage, if you're feeling disappointment, it's very important, in my opinion, to really understand and label what you're feeling. And then the second piece I'm always thinking about is, regulation. So it's one thing to understand what you're feeling, and that thing is to be able to control what you're feeling. So that way it's not spilling out. And the idea is to make sure that you're whatever actions you're doing, regardless of what's going on around you, is consistent with your long-term goals. And
Yeah.
having some measure of control helps. And then the third thing I'm always thinking about is empathy. So empathy is all about making sure that you're able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and regardless of what you're feeling, regardless of how things are going on in your world, you want to make sure that you're still considering other people, especially if you're in business as well. And then the last thing is skilled relationships, which is combining all of those skills and using them in your daily interaction with others. Now, the question I have for you, Tyler, is obviously you've been able to develop and grow these skills over the years. For someone who is like starting from day one, they have no idea of how to grow the skills. This is something that is very new to them. Considering that you were there at some point in your life, what would you say is the first, one, two, or three things people should be focusing on, or how they can approach, growing the skills and improving in how they're able to, manage themselves and their emotions?
Yeah, I think you're really bring up a good point about empathy too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but for my, I guess advice would probably be just practice being self-aware. This is a good, like, even on a daily basis, I always just sit back, relax, or sit back and take it all in where I'm at, and count the things I'm thankful for, and
Mm-hmm.
how I'm feeling that day. Or else reflecting is a really good practice. Reflect on your day, how it went, or your week or your month, and how you
Mm-hmm.
can be better. Reflecting has been a really good tool or a good practice for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out, say, okay, well, I didn't perform well on this, and then also, like, and I like to go back and try and figure out ways I could have done better, or how do I alter my schedule to kind of sharpen this tool that's not really performing that well. For example, say, um, if my planning was a little too stressed out or something, was it too stressing on everybody?
Mm-hmm.
I have to kind of adjust stuff like that, right? And yeah, I think that's what comes to mind right now is self-reflecting and self-awareness,
Absolutely.
practicing those. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think just to reference some of the things you were saying there, I think you were mentioning something about mindfulness, and mindfulness is about practicing to be aware and being in the moment right now and just being there. And I think that when you're in the moment and when you truly try to experience each moment as it is, it helps you understand how you're feeling about the moment, and then you can label those feelings as they come. And I think for myself, I've been able to do that when I do two activities. The first one is when I do journaling. I think that really helps me to be mindful and just be aware. So when I have whatever kind of situation I'm going through, if I write about it, it definitely helps me to feel more aware of what's going on around me and with myself. And then the second thing I think I might have picked up from your response is being able to get feedback and being able to uh, know how other people think about whatever it is you're doing. Sometimes it's hard to be aware of things because you're just lost in your activities or you're just lost in the world. But if you go get some feedback from someone, and someone you trust, someone you think has that best interest for you, it's very it's easier then to understand how your actions are perceived, and that really helps you to either tone it down or make some adjustments as needed. But having that second perspective, really, really key. What would you say was a role of coaches? I know when you ran businesses in College Pro, we did have coaches who were able to help give you that outside perspective. What would you say is the importance of that in being successful, whether as a professional or as an entrepreneur?
Coaches, I think really, um, they've played a really big role in my early business career,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of helped you get a different perspective as well. Like you mentioned, like having different people have what's their perspective on what you're doing right now, and how do they feel. And I found that in my past that I don't realize, like, I have my goal, but a lot of people that work for you, or your partner, or your friends and family, they have
Mm-hmm.
it's good to ask them once in a while to see if everything kind of aligns with what you're doing, and it's good to have that perspective too, and it kind of opens up different opportunities for problem solving you have to do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And coaching too is the same thing. I think it's good to have that different perspective, and it kind of helps you works through. I think coaching kind of challenges you to like, okay, well, he like my coach, for instance, Jared, his name was Jared Cole. You know the guy.
Yeah.
And he was my coach, and he'd always challenge me like, okay, well, this is what you've done. Okay, how far can you go? Or else if I'm struggling with something, he'd always challenge me. And I think that was a really big, nice motivating factor. He'd always keep me on my long-term goal, and figure out, help work together through problems and what that we were having. So I know my first year we've done a lot of problem solving, a lot of problem solving, we'll say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Tyler. And I guess the last phase of the questions I would like to ask you has to do with, again, the pandemic. The first question on that note is, how would you say the pandemic, I know you referenced earlier that, the pandemic has made some of your jobs be pushed back and whatnot, but at a general level, what would you say have been the biggest challenges the pandemic has brought to you personally, just from performance wise and just mental wise, like mentally? How would you say the pandemic has affected you, and how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, that actually had a big toll on me, now that I think about it. But yeah, it's because I kind of feed off, or like when we're doing this work, we usually go to, again, conferences, or you work together with other people with similar goals. And when you're in home, or you're stuck at home and you're just doing the Zoom, like a Zoom meeting or something, it's not the same. You don't have that same interaction and that motivating factor when you come home from, I don't know, you go to a conference, you come home with a high. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I got this. Okay, I got this. This is what they're doing. So let's try that. Let's figure it out. But you don't really have that when you're dealing with the pandemic, because everybody's unfortunately at home. But and it's been took I'd say a decent hit on me, and just trying to be, especially with creativity. Yeah, working with other people, they have different ways of doing things, and you kind of mix and match what works, and you try those things out. It's been challenging on that aspect, I'd say, for sure.
Right. And what would your advice be for someone who is feeling that way, or how would you say you've dealt with that feelings of frustration and lack and reduction in creativity, if you will? What have you done so far to help?
Well, I always try and reach out to people. I always like today we're doing. I'm glad you reached out to me. Thank you for having me on here. But I like doing things like this. I like doing stuff that I'm a people person, so I like to communicate and reach out on people and see what this a certain friend of mine's up to. How can I help, or how ask some advice? And just reaching out to people is probably the best way to handle things like this, and it keeps you on the path. Like I am doing my master's right now in the evenings, and I have a couple of people I reach out to, so that work along the same things with me, and we just kind of work together and keep ourselves on the same path. And I think that's the best way to do it, from at least for me anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. People are very important, and making sure that even though we are all working from home or stuck at home, if you will, in Manitoba here, we've had a huge code red lockdown for everybody in the province. So, and that has been going on across North America, I'm sure, and even across the world. And for me, I think focusing on what we can control is very important. And what we can control is talking to friends, reaching out to people in that network, and just having conversations, which is partly why I started doing this podcast, because I wanted to really genuinely, reach out to people, talk to people, learn, hear about their stories, and basically just have good, wonderful conversations, because I miss that. Now, for you, Tyler, I'm very curious. What would you say, perhaps some predictions for what will happen in the next couple of years? And the reason why I'm asking this is, of course, everyone across the world has been dealing with this pandemic, and that is bound to change our some things, whether that's how we interact with each other or how business operates in the future. And there's no right or wrong answers to this. I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts on what the future would look like as a result of this pandemic and how it's affected us?
I think a lot of businesses are going to kind of lean towards being lean. What I mean by that is being able to pivot whenever they need to, right? And I think like again, traveling is going to be affected for sure. A lot of people, I know I read some places like after this pandemic, these Zoom meetings are going to be pretty common, just to get some things done that can be done on the Zoom meetings, right? And I think the main thing for me, I think, is going to be businesses being lean, trying to be lean, and being able to pivot when certain things change, right? So that's what I try to practice doing, is being lean as possible, being able to move where I have to move and do what I have to do, and without having a big expensive loan, I guess, would be an example, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And last question before I let you go here. Any words of wisdom or advice or perspectives or thoughts to our listeners before we let you go?
Yeah, I'm gonna give a shout out to my God, my partner, my friends, my staff, my family. They've been through this whole journey with me, and they know the struggles, the victories. And my biggest advice is find the people that'll support you through anything, through your biggest failures, through your biggest successes. Find those people, and make sure that you have them through all the hard times, and the victories as well. Include them in everything, because I know if I didn't have those people, it would be a lot harder to do what I have to do, especially through the dark times, the hardest lessons. And if you find a good supportive group, I think you can do, and with the right mindset, I think you can do anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you as well. I think even more so in this time we find ourselves in, those key people in our lives who help us through thick and thin. I think it's very important to even lean more on them and have them closer than ever before, because they truly make a difference. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on the show here, Tyler. It's been wonderful, hearing about your experience, learning about your journey, learning about your success and struggles. And it's been such a huge pleasure coming on the show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was an honor having me, man. I'm glad I was on that list of people. Yeah, hopefully we'll do this again. We'll catch up again for sure.
I'm definitely sure we'll do that. Thank you, Tyler.
All righty.